So since they are for sure better than me, then present themselves, what they are doing, I will give them right now the time to present themselves. However, they will start immediately, to respond also to the first questions about the biggest mistake you see normally in AI evaluation. Just remember to tell the audience from which perspective. So if you're an investor, if you're from the corporate, and the biggest mistake that you see. But present yourself and reply to the questions right after. Thank you.
All right. I'm Maria Pienaar. I'm a operating partner with Unicorn Growth Capital. We are a embedded finance fintech fund, pre-seed through Series A, focusing a lot also on stablecoin infrastructure. So yeah, we see a lot of AI coming in even in the fintech side. So I am also one of the mentors here at Innovit. I tend to sometimes run the term sheet workshops here. So it's always good to be back, and it's such a great organization to work with. So thank you, Alberto. Yeah, so how we evaluate AI. Now, when you early growth stage investor like we are, the first thing we evaluate is on the founding team. I'm a extreme skeptic. I keep on hearing how it's going to be a single founder unicorn that's just run by digital workers. That will not pass the bus test for us, because if a bus hits the founder, the opportunity is gone. So for us, first of all, it's to understand the team, if they have enough domain expertise, and how they basically, what's the real opportunity. And for me, if there's AI in play, because I say we deal with both blockchain and AI in some cases, is how do they really apply AI to really drive growth and scale? Now, I'm one of the first that will run to deep experts to look at the technology once we get to the technology. But at the end of the day, the founding team still need to showcase for us how they're going to build distribution and customers. And
may I just for now?
Yeah.
Just the biggest mistake.
Oh, the
first,
biggest mistake.
And then we evaluate.
And then they evaluate. Okay, sorry. So the biggest mistake I still see in AI evaluations is the love of the product and the tools. And a lot of the time they can be displaced. So a lot of the time, if it's just something that can be quickly displaced by one of the larger players just tweaking some things, then that's not a great opportunity. But that for me is one of the biggest mistake is falling in love with the AI tools.
Thank you, Maria.
Hi, my name is Stef. I'm the head of AI research at Canva, originally from the University of Padua. Maybe next time we have Veneto also supporting, so that we expand the pool. I've been here in the Bay Area for like 20 years. Was at Stanford, did a startup, worked at Adobe, Roblox, and I also started a company recently in the AI film space called Neura Studio. So I went through some of those things that you just described. And so the biggest mistake, I think, is sometimes no understanding whether AI is a breakthrough in the industry or is just an incremental. So there are industries where for now, for example, like in the legal industry, right? Like AI is not a disruptor right now. It's just an incremental, productivity tool. You cannot replace a full pipeline of legals. Actually, the law does not allow that. But there are other industries where AI is a complete game changer. And so I think that those two things will lead to like very different valuations.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shilpa Prasad, and I'm the head of incubation for new AI ventures at LG Electronics. So LG Nova is the North America Innovation Center here in the Valley. And our mandate has been to move LG Electronics towards being a solutions company. And in that context, emerging technologies like generative AI definitely come into play quite effectively. Over the last 20 years, I've had extensive background within the corporate innovation space, worked in startup ecosystem building, and then tried my hand at being a founder. And to Shikhar's point, product market fit is extremely crucial. In that experience, we couldn't prove product market fit, and I moved into this role. So I'm going to say +1 to everything the three panelists have said up until now, because they're all very different perspectives. But I think in our world or universe currently, which is a corporate venture studio, one of the things we look for, and I think the biggest mistake that startups possibly make when are being evaluated don't consider is sustainable revenue. And that piece, I think, is tied to product market fit, is tied to data, is tied to so many other aspects within any business. But the sustainable revenue piece, I think, is a key element to demonstrate correct valuations for the startups. So thanks, Carlo.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Bafandeh. I have a background in working in startups, AI, data science, machine learning previously, now lead a data consultancy called Data Culture. We help mid-market companies set up their infrastructure for their data capabilities and AI capabilities. So we are industry agnostic, but specifically specialize with CPG and healthcare. And so I'll speak from the perspective of companies that are evaluating AI solutions, and the most common mistake that I see. I was going to say something that was already mentioned, which is starting small and iteratively scale out. But I'll instead share this runner-up, which is not thinking about what is necessary to make that particular solution successful. I think people get very excited by the demos, which work really well. They're very shiny, polished, fancy, execute perfectly for the use case. But underneath the hood, you need to think about, what does the solution need to perform with the appropriate context? Does it need access to your org chart? Is your org chart clean? A lot of times it requires data that is not ready to go, that needs to be fed into these AI solutions in order for it to work effectively. And so thinking past, the solution itself and thinking about what inputs are necessary to make it successful is something that I see overlooked often.
Thank you so much.
Ciao, buonasera. My name is Freddie Martignetti. First, let me say I'm a proud Italian American. My family came from Avellino in 1908. Oh, nice. There we go. But my first trip to Italy when I was a child was to Tuscany. So the first place I remember in Italy was San Gimignano and Firenze and Siena. So I'm happy to be here tonight. My family's in the wine business too. So anyway, that's yeah. But in any event, I am in the venture capital business. I've been in venture for the last 15 years. I started a firm with my co-founder, Manish Patel, 4 years ago now. Actually, our office is upstairs. We're called Nava Ventures. We're a Series A investor. We write, on average, a $10 million check to lead rounds, concentrated portfolio. We're a generalist fund, but we spend most of our time in enterprise AI, data, dev tools, healthcare, fintech. I love what I do, and I consider myself very fortunate to get to work with brilliant people seeking to reshape, change, even create industries. There's been a lot of insightful things said about mistakes that are made when evaluating AI. I think it's probably worth saying, like, we're all kind of trying to figure this out right now because it's happening in real time. So we're doing our best. But I guess if I had to add something, I would say, I think you made an interesting comment about sustainable revenue. I would double click on that if I could and say it's a sustainable business model. And by that, I mean, if you look back to other kind of frothy, let's say, periods, I don't want to call it a bubble because I'm not sure it's a bubble, but there's a lot going on very quickly and companies are growing really rapidly. If you look back to previous periods, like, maybe the late 90s, that sort of thing, the companies that shot up very quickly to extremely high valuations and ultimately cratered to earth were the ones that didn't have margin and profit. So I hate to be a downer because in venture capital, we like growth, But ultimately, if you're going to be a big boy company and you're going to go public and you're going to have large institutional investors and retail investors and so on and so forth, you need to demonstrate growth as well as profit. And there are some companies out there now that are worth $20+ billion that don't really have a sense of what their viable business model will look like. That's a tenuous position to be in. It doesn't mean that they won't get there, but in order to invest in these companies, I think you need to have at least some sort of articulation of what that business model will look like.
Thank you so much for this insightful, already information on the better choice or the evaluation. Now, just to let you understand, so we are distributing to the panelists the use case. They never saw it before, so for them it's the first time, and was done by purpose because they need to reasoning with you, at the loud voice, how they will evaluate from their perspective if this could be something suitable for them or not to adapt. I give you just some insights about what it is, so you can know what we're doing. So they're evaluating a customer support voice assistant. So this is something that is already on the market, but is creating a lot of issues. Many companies say that is not good enough right now. Others that the quality of the assistant is going down, so the reputation of the company can reflect on this, and the quality of the assistant that is provided, and so on. So they have different kind of information from the state of the art, the value proposition, the target, and the team, and so on. The product is answering calls automatically. So most of the times can answer everything by themselves, tracking the summary of what is going on. It could do some easy tasks, so booking an appointment or sending a report or whatever, sending emails and so on. And if it's a tough request, can also decide to call a real human inside, involve a real human, providing the summary of what is going on. Do you need any more time? One of you is already ready to start?
Looking at me like
okay. No, you were looking for me. So
yeah, I'll do it.
They will have 5 minutes each, so you have also the timer there to help you.
So okay, all right. So I just have to pontificate on this for 5 minutes?
Exactly.
I don't know if I can fill 5 minutes. I'll try.
And the others could ask questions if they need, to do something. But
so you want me to just kind of treat this like an investment committee meeting, talk about it,
exactly.
poke holes in it, that sort of thing. Okay. So
and maybe
should I start by telling them what it is?
Yes, I already. Okay. Yes, you can ask. You can provide tools, questions that you would like also do for the calls and so on.
You tell me if I'm doing it wrong.
Okay. Don't say if you would invest or not. This is the last part of the panel.
So what the case study that we have here is for a customer support voice assistant. And so just to give you a few bullet points, it answers calls and interacts meaningfully, takes simple actions, check on an order, update an address, create a ticket, connects to existing tools, your customer relationship management system, CRM, ticketing, hands calls to humans when needed, learns from past calls to improve over time. It's a pretty broad industry target, any organization. It says, let's see, I'll just kind of skip some of this stuff. Value prop, shorter wait times, faster resolutions, lower cost, 24/7 coverage. They have 15 paid pilots, 86% success rate. I guess that means conversion from pilots to paid. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Yes, it's
or the success of the product.
Success of the responses. Okay. So 86% of the responses are in line with the request.
Okay. 1.5 second speed. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds fast. Cost is 18 cents a minute. A lot of security and compliance stuff. SOC 2 audit in progress. Technology, single LLM vendor today, large language model, multi-model roadmap. Business health, they've got 11 months of runway. They burn $250,000 a month. They've got some smart people. The CEO exited a B2B SaaS business for which he built to $20 million in ARR. You've got an NLP, natural language processing PhD from Stanford, who's ex-Google AI. And then you've got someone who spent 10 years as kind of a growth hacker and an influencer. So that's the story. What do I think when I look at this? So to me, this is one of these categories where I can just tell you from experience, there's like, you throw a rock right now out the window here and you'll probably hit someone in the head who has a business like this. There's so many of these companies. And so, I mean, look, you're in downtown San Francisco, right? This is what's going on around here right now. And so there's so many of these businesses, and I'm willing to bet one of the things that we get a little wary of is we just signed up our first vertical AI application, and we like it for a number of different reasons. But the reason why we haven't done more thus far is we get a little wary of just a kind of wrapper on top of a foundational large language model, because then you start to get into what is the real differentiation there, particularly one like this that has a single model solution. Now they're working with OpenAI, so they're working with the best in class. But the question is, what's the value there? What happens if things change at OpenAI, and so on and so forth? And so in this particular instance, I think from a moat perspective, I don't lose too much sleep over moats, but I think in this instance, it's worth considering. The real moat here would be a first mover advantage. And I think that is a meaningful moat. I mean, if you're out there ahead of everyone else and your product is good enough and people like it, then I think that could make you unique in the landscape. Now, first product doesn't always win. Like Facebook was not the first social media site, not by a wide measure, right? So just as one example. But I would be very curious to know if they are a first mover advantage. I think that the addressable market for them is way too broad just to be, hey, we're a customer service agent that can answer calls with voice, and we'll service anybody. That's too broad to have an effective sales program for something that has no real differentiation. If I were them, and if I have to look at it to evaluate this, I'd be much more comfortable if they said, we are so specialized in, let's come up with something Italian, I don't know, salami making. We do all the customer service for prosciutto making, my favorite. Okay, we'll do prosciutto. We do the prosciutto industry is not a great example because it's probably not a big enough industry, but something really big, automotive, or I don't know, industrial or chemicals or something, or healthcare, a specific vertical of healthcare. We focus explicitly on this market. And because of that, then you start to build not only a meaningful first mover advantage and your brand grows within that industry, but you also, because of the iterative nature of this kind of product, start to develop real experience and expertise, and your product becomes more and more effective in that vertical. So for me, I worry a bit about that, and I'd want to see more specificity in the addressable market. Is that 5 minutes?
Yes, you have 18 seconds left, so congratulations. Thank you so much.
Whoa.
I hope startups are listening this evaluation, because for them it's extremely important.
I can go next.
Go ahead, absolutely.
So thank you, Freddie, for doing such a wonderful job of demonstrating what this company is all about to the audience. Yes, I know. So you did smart there. But I think when I'm looking at this data sheet in front of me, one of the questions I'm asking myself is, you've got 15 paid pilots, but what is the conversion from pilot to actual deployment, right? Like that's a really fundamental question to ask. And it seems like there is not much information in here that has been provided around that. I do think that the thing that Freddie alluded to with respect to the focus piece, I think is very important as well. Currently, it's described as we cater to any organization, and I think segmentation is very, very critical. So that's a question, again, that I think is important to address from the point of view of where this business is headed and what they're likely to accomplish. I'd say, one of the, I think metaverse comes to mind as we're talking about a generative AI company. There were so many examples of startups that got at least 30 to 50 paid pilots that couldn't convert into paid full-fledged deployments and recurring revenue. So I think that is a very, very crucial element in terms of how to present what the business is all about to the investors, to the partners, to the stakeholders that you're talking to. I think I would also, without sounding like I'm rambling because the timer is on, want to understand who the customers are. Where are you seeing more traction? Which industries, which segments are actually benefiting from the value proposition that has been listed? So I think those are some of the things that are top of mind for me.
So just to summarize your point of view for the startups in particular perspective, because AI startups most of the times are speaking about tech during the pitches, but you are, both of you, as underlined that it doesn't matter. You didn't evaluate the tech almost completely, so you went direct to the market. So if you have a market, tech is there or not, it almost doesn't matter in some ways.
Well, it kind of matters, but who the tech is most relevant for, I think, is what I'd like to see more of. So,
I think for me, the point on that. Oh, thank you. For me, the point on that is, as I said, there's such a high concentration of these sorts of companies, and so the differentiation from a product perspective is usually pretty limited. There's a lot of people out there that are very smart, very talented, that are building layers on top of large language models that can serve a function like this. So sure, we would want to verify the tech, but it's almost a foregone conclusion that it can be done.
Okay. So if you are not really a top, let's say, tech companies, tech AI that are building a lot of tech behind, deep tech AI in some ways, don't lose time and try to raising money. Go to the market first, raising customers, and then probably go to
the bar is higher for companies that are more kind of AI deployment, if you will, or enablement, that sort of thing. However, the attractive thing about that is they don't need as much money. So OpenAI, I don't know how many untold trillions of dollars. Yeah, okay, I'm looking at you like maybe you can tell it. But they're going to need a lot of money. You know what I mean? So if this works, they're not going to need as much money, but the differentiation isn't as strong.
Thank you.
Right. So I'm going to start. I assume this is an early growth company because it doesn't really tell us anything about what they're looking for, the deal that's on the table here, which is normally what you would see in an investment. So I'll start with the team because early growth companies, as I say, team is the most important. You can have the best tech in the world, but if you don't have a team that can execute, that company is likely not going to be successful. So it's interesting to see that you have a good B2B SaaS founder that's exited for $20 million. Not sure what CD Chan's experience is within the voice assistant market and the domain expertise that they bring, but at least there might be some expertise in how to sell to enterprises. CTO, that's good to know. The CMO, I'm a bit confused about because this is clearly a B2B play. And you've got a CMO that's a direct-to-consumer person. So B2B and direct-to-consumer is quite different.
But he's Italian. So.
He's Italian. He or she, because it doesn't say if it's a he or she. Even though diversity may be such a swear word here in the US at the moment, we do actually care still about diversity in teams because it's just from research does show that diverse teams do return more on the dollar. So yeah, the team, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the domain expertise in this space and the experience in this space of voice assistant. Now, I was also quite concerned about, okay, you get all these wonderful platforms, and I know in B2B space, you always, especially if you're selling to large enterprises or medium enterprises, you always battle with the internal IT teams for the products you bring in. So if you get wonderful technologies, OpenAI releases a new version where you can just build your own. That would be a concern for me, is how do they compete with that? Value proposition for me, this reads more like a feature list. A real value proposition will give me information on what's the ROI that they drive for the customers. So this is a little bit too product focused for me. As I say, we are not the customer, we're the investor. We like to understand the opportunity and how you're going to drive the revenues. Again, yeah, paid pilots, I agree. I would love to see what's the conversion into contracts and do understand a little bit more about what's the lifetime value of contracts. Are you signing a month-to-month contract? not a good idea? Are you signing 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts? What's the average value of a contract? Would be quite nice to understand as well. So yeah, not sure if there's enough differentiation because this is so focused on product and features.
Thank you so much. So this was most of the part of the panels related to the investors. Now probably we are going more in the corporate side, so more to understand if this makes sense for integration, I guess, right?
Yeah, I can do my 5 minutes, maybe less. I'm gonna add that I'm also an angel investor and advisor to a couple of AI funds, and so I've seen a lot of those pitches. And I want to go back to Freddie that said the word wrapper. So that was like something that VCs used to say a lot, like, oh, it's just a wrapper around like this LLM. But then cursor happened, and then basically nobody is allowed to like dismiss the wrapper anymore, right? Because the valuation of cursor was so high, people were like, oh my god, this is amazing. How fast cursor replaced the market leader, which was Copilot, was incredible. And so I think there is value on the even the pure wrapper, as long as the team really is executing at a different level. And sometimes they go after verticals the big companies just don't have the focus to address because maybe the market is too small. For me, the main red flag of this brief is the value proposition, because this feels like a brief from like a few years ago where like they're comparing themselves to humans, but that's no longer the case. Like, everybody understands that knowledge workers and customer support are gone, right? As professions for humans, they're all going to be handled by AI, and so the value proposition should be against other AI solutions, not against humans. That's an obvious battle that the humans would lose. And so I would expect them to say why their solution is better compared to some of the incumbents in the space, or compared to like what is the differentiating approach. And I don't see that in the brief, so I would not know why they will be one of better than any of the 50,000 companies, as Freddie said, that are doing customer support. If you travel and you take the Bay Bridge, you I think see at least 4 or 5 of those on the ads over there, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like there's a war happening there. So yeah, that would be my main issue with this brief, is that the founders don't have the context of the game. Like, the game is now a game of value prop against humans, is a game against 50,000 companies that are doing the same thing. And so why are you special? What's the unique approach? Give me some signals that your solution is gaining traction. Going back, great to have the pilots. In my first startup, basically I needed like paying customers, and we had 0. And so I called a few friends, and I think we charged them like $1, and then we gave the equivalent of like $20,000 worth of a service, just so we could say, okay, we have paying customers now, but they paid $1. So there's like 15 here, so I don't know how much they paid, but again, it's all about the conversion rate and less about the number of pilots. I agree.
May I ask a question? Because this is interesting that you have, this investment side and also corporate side right now, in Canva, where you are integrating a lot of, features. And you said something like, I'm evaluating the value proposition, and they are evaluating their value propositions against human instead of against other AI solutions. This is an interesting perspective from a startup, because normally if you want to go out to the customers, so let's talk about from your corporate side, so are you evaluating this as investors, like AI against an AI, and as a corporate AI against humans, substitute humans, or even inside the corporate you are starting thinking about AI against AI without thinking that they are substituting human tasks?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for this kind of task, customer support, every big tech right now has a hybrid approach, at least between automation and humans in the role. So I think the value prop will also be AI against AI, because it's basically already in most of the customer support workflows. There's a good amount of AI already, at least like the first line, maybe the second line or third line, then the human comes in the game, but at least at the beginning, there's a lot of AI.
That's a good point, because it's changing the way that startups supposed to address the market, because they are selling, maybe is not able to sell because they are selling the wrong way.
Carlo,
Sorry,
may I
go
make
ahead,
a
yes.
Quick comment. So, Steph, thank you for that. I think it's. I wanted to respond to your comment about the wrapper because it's a good point. Because it's kind of saying that something, oh, it's just a wrapper. It kind of sounds like someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. And there's a little bit of truth to that. So, like I said, I'm trying to figure it out. However, I'll push back a little bit on the Cursor example for a few different reasons. First of all, Cursor, as you said, they unseated Copilot largely. They're predominantly focused on the developer community. It's also kind of allows people to, I don't know, vibe code and that sort of thing. But it's predominantly focused on developers, which is one thing that this company does not have. It doesn't have the focus. So I think Cursor benefited by having focus and really dominating a particular field quickly. That's the first mover advantage. However, Cursor, I think, is slated to be worth, like right now, $20+ billion. They give like at least 80% of their revenue to Anthropic. I know they said they might be giving some to OpenAI too, but most of it still goes to Anthropic. In fact, sometimes they give more than 100% of their revenue. So sometimes I've have it on pretty good account that on occasion there's negative gross margin over there. So will they be worth 20 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion? I hope so. I hope so for them and for all their investors. But back to this notion of what does the business model look like? That's one that I have questions about. And it is a natural reality of this wrapper question. It could work, but the way I see it right now, with a maybe 10, 20% gross margin, they have questions to answer.
Who's next?
I was also going to just, to Steph's comment about the value proposition and how to evaluate that against the AI or against the human. In this particular case, I think, given the voice assistant that this is, it makes sense to think about it from the point of view of AI versus AI. But I think there is still a lot of opportunity in this industry where how humans are currently doing the task versus how AI will bring in the efficiency is still a very key consideration. So perhaps something hybrid in here might also make sense, right? Instead of just one-sided.
And also coming back to one question I would have with regards to customer support and AI and that. I mean, a recent lawsuit come to mind, which is, I think it's Canada Airlines that got sued for quite a bit of money because the AI agent were going a little bit mushroomy on refunds. And, which caused them with regulatory challenges. So one of the things I'm also starting to ask when these is how these agents get trained and what's their training, and is it going to help the customer actually train the model to, and how will they keep on seeing how it would be consistent. So I would have loved to see a little bit of information on that.
Thank you so much. Brittany, are you ready?
Yes, I can go next. So I think these are all great points across the board. I want to speak from the perspective of someone internal at a company who might be evaluating this solution. I think the first thing that stands out here is this company is very early, 15 paid pilots in a really crowded space, and the product interacts with customers. So it is very high risk if this goes wrong. Right? You get angry customers and the company itself doesn't have a reputation that you can rely on. And as someone evaluating a solution for the company, that reflects poorly on you. And so thinking about what would have to be true in order to make engaging with this company, collaborating with this company work is maybe what I'll speak to give a different perspective to the builders in the room. Is I think one of the benefits from a company perspective working with a startup is the level of support and engagement that you get when you work with founders. And so I think there is opportunity here if I was the company evaluating to say, hey, you know what, we have a really specific problem that the solutions in the market don't serve. Maybe we're in healthcare and there's a specific kind of like niche billing concern that takes into consideration insurance claims. Who knows what it is? But using this as an opportunity to say, hey, the market doesn't serve my need. will you work with me to custom tailor your solution to what I need? And you get really high touch support from a really capable team and likely can shape a lot of that product. I think the question then becomes, I would want to evaluate for this company, are they willing to narrow in on the things that I care about? So I see here the top tasks is order and delivery status, billing questions, plan changes, appointment scheduling, claim status. Also, they support English, but Spanish is in beta. Like, they're trying to do way too much. And if I felt comfortable, a lot of it is relationship based and trust in early stage teams. If I felt comfortable that they were committed to investing in a particular specific area that I felt was high need for our company, I think then it would make more sense to explore what an engagement would look like. But I would say right off the bat, yeah, if like it's going to be hard to justify this to the higher ups about why we want to invest in this early stage company that is trying to boil the ocean.
Thank you so much. Back again. So thank you so much for evaluating that. So I guess that from by your comments is something that you will never adopt, most of you, so at least. So let's say, what would need for a company like this, to be considerate, to say, okay, you have to work on this to be attractive. So just really quickly, so 1 minute for each, just to understand. So what's your suggestion to focus to companies like this? Not just customer assistant, but everybody's working AI at this level of solutions. What they really need to focus to be attractive for investors or corporates as a market, and to be successful.
I'll talk to it about from an investor perspective. So from an investor perspective, as I say, team domain experience for me is important to at least know that this team understands this customer service space and have some experience in that. And obviously from a technical perspective, that they have the necessary leadership skills to drive AI product development. The second one is really the value proposition. Now, the value proposition here is just purely features, functions. A value proposition from an investment perspective is not feature function. It's what's the problem you're solving, for whom, what's the impact if this problem is not solved, and what is the impact once you've solved that your product bring in solving that. So yeah, too generic in it's all over the map, not clear what the problem is that they're solving and why that matters. So a lot of companies that I see make a mistake is that they everything and the kitchen sink. Now that's not very helpful for us as investors, because if you target it and build your growth in a specific area, like Cursor, the example of Cursor was known, then you can become a category leader, and that would be good to explain it around whatever that means for this specific product. And then obviously the opportunity. So give me metrics on, the customer acquisitions, how fast, what's the sales cycle, and things like that. That would be important.
Yeah, from the corporate adoption standpoint, I think the first thing we would like to see, and this goes back to something that was said before, like this AI agent is interfacing with our customers, the relationship with the community being the most important thing of the business. And so we will want to see that they know our customer better than we do, right? They really have done case studies, or they have like customers in the similar, creative space. So they have, we know we can rely on them, we can trust them. But ultimately, for a lot of these startup, the partnership with big companies is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because in some situations, like the company may choose a third party at the beginning because it's just getting started on that specific field. But if that field has meaningful margins, those margins will be vertically integrated back inside the company, right? So if this company is making, 30% profit, which of course they're not going to do, but doing customer support, then given the scale and the volume of the company, this function will be incorporated inside the company. And we have seen also, I think maybe in the LLM a little bit less of a trend, but if you see already the things happening in the image foundational models and the video foundational models, the open source solutions are fantastic, and they're like just barely worse, or in some cases they are comparable to third-party solutions, commercial solutions. And so the road to LLM is probably a lot harder, and we never know how when that will happen, but it's definitely like a trend in a lot of these areas. Large tech companies will leverage some open source infrastructure and will build in-house some of those functions that are like just so close to the customer.
So I think outside of everything else that's been shared, one of the things that's coming to mind is from a technology perspective, and the intelligence of generative AI is a given. So my 2 cents here would be find the focus. So once you've figured out which segment you want to go after, what does the go-to-market look like? Demonstrate that as effectively, quickly, with a scalable product and prove product market fit, I think is sort of the 2 cents that I would give this company.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. +1 on focus. I think from a solution standpoint, there's a lot of these capabilities out there, and the way to get people's attention and make people go to bat for you is by solving a very specific problem that they can't get solved elsewhere.
It's tough going last because these guys made such good points. But if I had to, the only way they could get an investment from me now, right now, so not tell you what to work on in the future, but right now, would be if they could clearly tell me why they are better than every other one of these companies. So how can you be a cursor? We've established that they don't have the focus, but is there something about them that's just better than everyone else that will make people want to use them? They're not the first. They don't have the focus. Can they be the best? I guess that would be what I'd really want to hear. And then something different. Maybe I think people have already kind of alluded to this too. But again, focus. But something else that in the future, if these guys came back to me and said, "Hey, we had 100% pilot conversion. We're working with, let's say, the best companies. We're working with the best companies in whatever it is. I guess if they don't have the focus, but they're working with what's a good company? Apple, Microsoft. They're weird companies to work with, but General Electric, let's say, whatever. Some big old-fashioned companies. They've got great brands, and they have great advocates within those companies. They probably did some things that didn't scale. Meaning like the founders, I think the point was made earlier, went in there and made their product beloved by those people. They showered them with focus and attention and won their commitment. That would be something I'd want to hear in 12 months, 6-12 months.
Thank you so much for everyone. I hope that this was insightful for you. Thank you again for being here tonight.